My wife bet her coworkers $5,000 that she could make me cry in public. And the sickest part? She actually used my father's death to win. Yeah. Let that sink in for a second. This isn't just a bad joke gone too far kind of story. This is the kind of betrayal that makes you question whether the person you sleep next to at night even knows you, or if you've just been a pawn in their little games all along. Because when I tell you how far she went, how she smiled while dragging out my deepest wound in front of strangers, and how one of her smug coworkers laughed like it was the best comedy set he'd ever seen, you'll understand why I can't even look at her the same way anymore. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we dive into that nightmarish scene at the food festival, let me take you back. Because trust me, the cracks in this marriage didn't start with a $5,000 bet. They started way earlier, in ways that might sound familiar to some of you watching right now. Sarah, my wife of almost 7 years, has always been the kind of person who loves to get a reaction. Mischievous, competitive, sharp-tongued with a laugh that makes people instantly forgive her. On the surface, that might sound charming, right? The life of the party personality. But behind closed doors, and especially over time, those little jokes and pranks start to feel less like fun, and more like tiny paper cuts. Imagine this: you're at dinner with friends, trying to relax, and out of nowhere your partner blurts out a personal story you trusted them with, just to get a laugh. Or you're sitting on the couch after a long day, and suddenly your chili tastes 10 times hotter because they dumped extra hot sauce in as a gotcha moment. Most people would laugh once or twice, maybe roll their eyes. But when it happens again and again and again, when it starts happening in front of other people, and at your expense, it chips away at you. Quietly. Slowly. Until one day you realize you're not just annoyed, you're humiliated. That was my life with Sarah. And the worst part? Every time I spoke up about it, she'd do the same thing. She'd give me those wide, apologetic eyes, mumble, "I didn't mean to embarrass you, promise to be better," and then repeat the same pattern weeks later. Now I know some of you might already be thinking, "Okay dude, why didn't you set harder boundaries?" And to be honest, I thought I did. I told her straight up, multiple times, I don't like being the butt of the joke. I told her how much it hurt. And she said she heard me. But saying and doing are two very different things. Fast forward to a few weeks ago. Sarah came home from work practically glowing, like she was in on the juiciest secret in the world. And what did she tell me? That she bet her coworker, a guy named Marcus, $5,000 that she could make me cry in public. First I laughed. I mean, who wouldn't? It sounded absurd. Who in their right mind bets thousands of dollars on humiliating their spouse? But as she kept talking, the grin on her face never faltered. She was serious. "Oh babe, don't worry," she said. "It's just harmless fun. I'd never actually hurt you." But here's the thing. What kind of harmless fun involves deliberately trying to break your partner down in front of strangers? I asked her, point blank, why would you even agree to something like that? Why is making me cry something you'd gamble on? And you know what she did? She brushed it off. Waved her hand like I was being too sensitive. Told me it wasn't that deep. That Marcus was just full of himself, and she wanted to shut him up. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to take her at her word when she promised she wouldn't actually go through with it. But deep down, something in my gut whispered otherwise. And I hate to admit it, that voice was right. Here's the truth. When someone you love starts treating your feelings like a game piece, the warning signs show up fast. At dinners with friends, she started teasing me about my thinning hair. About the fact that I still hadn't landed that promotion at work. Always with that same playful tone, always followed by, "Relax, I'm just joking." But the way she looked at me, the way she studied me like a lab experiment, just waiting for me to crack, told me this wasn't about jokes anymore. This was about that bet. About $5,000 sitting like a golden carrot dangling in front of her and Marcus. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. But then came the food festival. And trust me, that day burned itself into my memory forever. Because at that festival, surrounded by her coworkers, including Marcus himself, my wife didn't just cross a line, she obliterated it. She took the most vulnerable, painful memory of my life and turned it into a punchline. But that part of the story? That's coming soon. And when you hear what she said, and how it made me feel, you're going to understand why this wasn't just a joke. Why this wasn't just a bad moment. This was betrayal in its rawest form, so let's rewind for a second. Because for anyone hearing this and thinking, wow, how did it ever get this bad? Trust me, I ask myself the same thing every day. Sarah and I weren't some whirlwind romance that burned hot and fizzled out. No, ours was the kind of relationship that looked stable on the surface. We met in college. I was 22, she was 21. And we did all the things couples are supposed to do. Study dates in the library, late-night takeout, watching each other's favorite shows even when we hated them. We stuck together through exams, internships, our awkward first jobs, by the time we hit our late 20s. Getting married just felt like the next step. Everyone around us was doing it. And I'll be honest, I thought I hit the jackpot. Sarah was fun, she was social, she lit up every room she walked into. Compared to my quieter, more introverted personality, she was the spark that made life feel less ordinary. But sparks can burn. And when that life of the party energy is aimed at you instead of the crowd, it doesn't feel like fun anymore. It feels like a spotlight, hot, heavy, and relentless. As Sarah's humor was always sharp, sometimes cutting. At first, I brushed it off because, well, isn't that what couples do? You tease each other, you laugh, you move on. But over the years, it started to pile up. Like the time she told a group of friends about how I cried when we watched Marley and Me. Or when she thought it was hilarious to hide the car keys when I was already running late for work. Or how she would imitate the way I stress-eat chips whenever I was anxious. Tiny things, sure. But when they add up, they start to shape how people see you. And worse, how you see yourself. I tried to talk to her about it. More than once. Sarah, I don't like being the punchline all the time. And she'd always say the same thing. Babe, it's just a joke. You're too sensitive. Sensitive. That word became a dagger after a while. Because once someone slaps that label on you, everything you feel becomes easy to dismiss. And then there's Marcus. Oh, Marcus. This guy was the coworker everyone either loved or couldn't stand. From what Sarah told me, he was cocky, competitive, and always turning every conversation into some kind of contest. The type of guy who treats the office like a high school locker room. So when Sarah came home with that story about him boasting, "No woman can emotionally wreck me," I wasn't surprised. That sounded exactly like something Marcus would say. And of course Sarah, never one to back down from a challenge, jumped right in. "But I could make my husband cry in public before you ever cracked," she told him. "And Marcus?" He laughed and slapped down the challenge. $5,000. Now let's pause here. Because I want you to really imagine this. Your partner, the person you trust with your secrets, your pain, your insecurities, using you as their poker chip in a bet with some smug coworker. How would you feel? Would you brush it off as harmless fun? Or would you, like me, start questioning what your marriage even means? I confronted Sarah about it the night she told me. Why would you even agree to something like that? I asked her. She shrugged. Because Marcus is an idiot. And I wanted to win. It's not like I'd actually go through with it. She said it so casually, like I was overreacting. And maybe if it had been a small, stupid bet, like who could run faster or who could chug a soda, I'd have laughed it off. But no. This was about me. My emotions. My dignity. My tears. I told her flat out, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want you or your coworkers seeing me as some joke. She promised she'd drop it. But you know how sometimes someone's words don't match their actions? That's what happened next. A few days later, Sarah started testing me. That's the only way I can describe it. Dinner with friends, she casually mentioned. Oh, OP's been stressing so much about work lately. He's probably worried his hairline is going to give up before he gets that promotion. Everyone laughed. I forced a smile. Inside, though, my stomach clenched. Another night, we were with her coworkers at a bar, and she joked about how I once Googled how to look confident in meetings. She delivered the line like it was stand-up comedy. Marcus was there. He smirked. And the whole time, Sarah kept glancing at me out of the corner of her eye. Watching. Measuring. Like she was waiting for me to break. I called her out again. "Sarah, I know what you're doing. You promised you'd drop it." She waved me off with that same line. "Relax, I'm just teasing. It's not that deep." But I knew. Deep down, I knew. The bet was still alive. Here's the thing. When you're in a relationship, trust is everything. And once that trust starts to crack, it doesn't just affect big moments. It seeps into the everyday. I started feeling paranoid. Every time we went out, every time we saw her coworkers, I felt like I was under a microscope. Like my wife and Marcus had this invisible scoreboard only they could see, and I was the game piece being moved around. That paranoia reached a breaking point at the food festival. But before I get there, let me ask you this, because for me, at this stage, I was torn. I still loved Sarah. I wanted to believe her promises. But my gut was screaming that something was very, very wrong. And unfortunately, my gut was right. Because the night of the food festival, Sarah didn't just test the waters. She dove straight into the deep end, and she used the most painful memory of my entire life as her weapon. But that's a story for the next act. The food festival. It should have been fun. One of those local weekend things where you wander around, try too many fried foods, laugh at the overpriced lemonade, and just enjoy being outside. But for me, that day turned into the single most humiliating moment of my marriage. Sarah suggested we go. At first, I thought it was a nice gesture. She knew I'd been stressed from work, and maybe she wanted to make up for the teasing. But when we got there and I spotted her coworkers, including Marcus, with that smug grin plastered across his face, my stomach sank. Immediately, I knew this wasn't about food. This was about the bet. We walked up, and I swear, the energy shifted instantly. Sarah's coworkers gave her these sly looks, like they were all in on some inside joke. And Marcus? He didn't even try to hide it. He smirked every time Sarah spoke, like he was scoring points in his head. It was little digs. Harmless enough that an outsider might not notice. Oh, OP can't handle spicy food. Remember that time he nearly cried over buffalo wings? Everyone chuckled politely. I clenched my jaw. Then it escalated. Don't let him near the beer tent. You know how he gets after 2 drinks. Another round of laughs. Another sideways glance from Sarah. Watching me, I tried to brush it off. Keep calm. Don't give them the satisfaction. But the longer it went on, the more I felt like a cornered animal. Like I was trapped in some cruel social experiment where everyone was waiting to see if I'd crack. And then, she crossed the line. We were all standing in a circle chatting when Sarah dropped the bomb. She laughed, actually laughed, and said, loud enough for the whole group to hear. Well, at least he didn't cry as much as when his dad died. Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. I froze. My chest tightened. My throat burned. You know those moments where the world feels like it stopped spinning? Where all the noise fades except for the pounding of your own heartbeat. That's what hit me. Because here's the thing, my father's death wasn't just some sad story. It was the darkest chapter of my life. After he passed, I fell into a depression so heavy I didn't know if I'd crawl out. Sarah was the one I confided in. She was the one I trusted with those raw private tears. And now? She was weaponizing that pain in front of strangers. All for a bet. I felt my eyes sting instantly. Tears welling up before I could even stop them. My body went numb, like my mind had disconnected to protect me. Marcus? He laughed. Actually laughed. A cruel, short burst that cut through the silence like a knife. And Sarah, she looked at me with this mixture of triumph and panic. Like she realized she'd won the bet, but hadn't thought about the cost. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stand in that circle and let them watch me crumble like some sideshow act, so I walked. Fast. Through the crowd, away from the stairs, away from the smirk on Marcus's face, away from the betrayal burning in my chest. But the tears, they came anyway. Hot, heavy, uncontrollable. I wiped at my face, but it didn't matter. People probably thought I was just emotional or drunk or whatever. But inside, I was shattered. That wasn't just embarrassment. That wasn't just a bad joke. That was the person I trusted most turning my grief into a public spectacle. Sarah chased after me. Babe, wait. I didn't mean it like that. I spun around. My voice cracked. Like what, Sarah? Like using my dad's death as a punchline? Like making me your pawn for a paycheck? Her face went pale. She stammered, it was just a joke. Marcus was egging me on. I wasn't thinking. I cut her off. You were thinking about the money. You were thinking about winning. You weren't thinking about me. You never do. People stared as we argued in the middle of the festival walkway. I didn't care. For once, I wanted her to feel exposed too. That night, the fight continued at home. She tried every excuse in the book. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know I joke too much. Marcus kept pushing me. I thought you'd understand it was just for fun. But no excuse could erase the image burned into my mind. Her laughing, Marcus smirking, my pain laid bare like entertainment, told her point blank. You didn't just make me cry in public. You broke something I don't know if we can fix. Now, here's where I need to pause and ask you guys. Do you think I overreacted here? Was walking away and calling her out the right move? Or should I have tried to swallow it and handle it more privately? I'm curious what side you're on. Because honestly, in that moment, I felt like I was standing on the edge of two paths. Path 1, swallow my pride, forgive her like I always did, and let the cycle continue. Path 2, finally draw a line and start reclaiming some dignity. And let me tell you, the fallout from choosing path 2 set off a chain reaction I never saw coming. Because the more I pulled away, the more desperate Sarah became. And that desperation led to secrets, lies, and moves that shifted the power in ways she didn't expect. It wasn't just sadness anymore, it was clarity. For years, I'd let Sarah brush off my feelings. It's just a joke. You're too sensitive. Relax, it's not that deep. And for years, I swallowed it, thinking love meant patience. Thinking marriage meant forgiving and moving on. But that night, when she used my father's death for entertainment, something broke. And honestly, I don't think it was just my trust in her. I think it was the version of me that tolerated it all. The first tactical move I made was quiet. I stopped reacting. See, Sarah thrived on reactions. The teasing, the pranks, the digs. It only worked if I gave her what she wanted. A laugh, a glare, a groan, or worst of all, tears. But after the food festival, I went silent. She'd throw out a jab. Don't stress too much, babe, you'll lose the rest of your hair. Instead of defending myself, I'd just nod and go back to my book. She'd complain, you're being so cold lately. I'd calmly reply, I'm just thinking. And let me tell you, that drove her crazy. Because for once, she wasn't in control of the game. The second move? I started documenting. Tea might sound extreme, but after the food festival, I realized I needed receipts. So I started keeping a private journal. Dates, times, what she said, how it made me feel. Not to get her in trouble, but to remind myself I wasn't imagining things. Gaslighting thrives when you doubt your own reality, and I wasn't going to let that happen again. And when Sarah realized I wasn't crumbling under her usual tactics, she escalated. Point one night, she tried to spin the story back on me. You embarrassed me at the festival when you stormed off like that, she said. I stared at her. You embarrassed me by making my dad's death a punchline. Her eyes darted. For once, she didn't have a quick comeback. That silence? That was a power shift. Because here's the thing, when someone builds their identity on being the witty, clever one, the moment you stop playing along, the spotlight turns back on them. But Marcus was still in the picture, didn't know the details, but my gut told me Sarah had bragged about winning. About making me cry. About pocketing that $5,000. And honestly, that disgusted me more than the joke itself. The thought of my grief being reduced to office gossip, a story Marcus probably retold over beers, it made my skin crawl. So I made my third tactical move. I started planning for exposure. Not revenge, not yet. Just leverage. I knew Sarah would never admit to the bet in front of anyone. But I had a suspicion she'd texted Marcus about it. So I started paying attention. When she left her phone unattended, when she giggled at her messages, when she suddenly stopped typing as I walked by, I didn't snoop. Not yet. But I logged the patterns. And each time my conviction grew stronger. She wasn't just guilty, she was proud. Around this time, Sarah started noticing the distance. You don't even look at me the same way, she said one night. And I told her the truth. I don't. Because every time I look at you, I see the person who laughed while I cried. Her face crumbled. For the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing the bet, not fear of Marcus, but fear of losing me. And that's when the begging started. Please, it was a mistake. Don't throw away 7 years over one bad joke. I love you, I wasn't thinking. But here's the thing, when you love someone, you protect their pain. You don't weaponize it. And once that line is crossed, it's not just about forgiveness. It's about survival, emotional survival. Now I want to pause here and ask you all something. And while you think about that, let me tell you what I chose. First, I leaned toward the quiet route. Talk to a lawyer, protect myself financially, maybe prepare for divorce. But then I pictured Marcus. Smirking. Laughing. Probably bragging to the whole office that he and Sarah pulled it off. And the thought of him getting away with it, of my humiliation becoming their private joke forever, I couldn't stomach it, so I made a decision. If Sarah wanted to turn my grief into entertainment, then I'd flip the script. I'd take control of the narrative. Here's how it started. Step 1. I confronted Sarah again, but this time calmly, directly. Tell me the truth. Did you take the money? She flinched. What money? Don't play dumb. The $5,000. Did Marcus pay you? Her silence was the answer. And that silence gave me everything I needed. Step 2. I pulled back. No yelling, no dramatic threats. Just quiet preparation. I moved some money into a separate account. I contacted an old friend who was a lawyer. I even dug out my dad's old journals for strength, because if he were alive, he'd tell me not to let anyone walk over me, not even my wife. Step 3. I started writing my own story. Not online, not yet. Just a letter. Every detail, every betrayal, every broken promise. Because one day, I knew I'd need to show people, maybe even a judge, exactly what happened. Meanwhile, Sarah got restless. She could feel the power slipping. She tried cooking my favorite meals, planning date nights, even dressing up the way she used to when we were dating. And for a moment, I almost gave in. Because love doesn't die overnight. But then I'd hear Marcus's laugh in my head. I'd see the look on her face at the festival, that mixture of triumph and panic. And I'd remember, this wasn't about love. This was about respect. And once respect is gone, what's left? The tension built like a storm cloud. Every conversation felt like a chess match. Every glance carried a weight. Until finally, the climax arrived. Because Sarah wasn't done playing games. Not by a long shot. One evening, while I was in the living room, I overheard her on the phone. Her voice low, urgent. He's pulling away. I don't know if I can fix it. No, he doesn't know I already spent it. My chest tightened. Already spent it. The $5,000, that was the final nail in the coffin. Not only had she taken money for making me cry, she'd spent it. Like blood money was just another deposit in her account. And at that moment, I knew exactly what had to happen next. Because if she thought making me cry was her big public win, she had no idea what was coming for her. The real public payoff, the moment where I finally reclaimed my dignity, was right around the corner. The night I overheard Sarah whispering on the phone, admitting she'd already spent the $5,000, something inside me snapped into place. All the doubt, the hesitation, the second-guessing gone. For weeks, I'd played it calm, tactical. I'd let her stew in the silence. I'd pulled back and gathered strength. But now it was time to make my move. Because if she could turn my grief into public entertainment, then she could handle the public fallout too. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Sarah's office was throwing a monthly happy hour. The same group of coworkers who had witnessed the bet, the same Marcus who started it all. Sarah wanted me to come, probably to parade me around like nothing was wrong. First, I almost declined. But then it hit me, this was the stage. The place where the humiliation started was the place it needed to end, so I agreed. We arrived at the bar, and just like I suspected, Marcus was there. Loud, smug, already with a beer in hand. Sarah clung to my arm like everything was perfect, but I could feel the tension in her grip. She knew I wasn't playing along anymore. The group laughed, ordered drinks, swapped stories. I sat quietly, waiting. Because sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. And then it happened. Marcus, in his infinite arrogance, couldn't help himself. He leaned over with that smirk and said, "Hey man, no hard feelings about last time, right? That was something else." The table chuckled. Sarah froze. And that's when I struck. I leaned back, loud enough for everyone to hear, and asked, "Marcus, maybe you can clear something up for me. Did you pay my wife $5,000 to make me cry in public?" The whole table went silent as Sarah's face drained of color. Marcus's smirk faltered. "What are you talking about, man?" he stammered. But I didn't blink. "Don't play dumb. You made a bet. She took it. And she won, at my expense. Isn't that right, Sarah?" Her lips trembled. She whispered, "Please not here." But I wasn't about to let her control the stage anymore. I pulled out my phone and opened the notes I'd been keeping. Dates, times, word-for-word quotes. I read them aloud. The table sat in stunned silence as I laid out the evidence. "And just so everyone's clear," I said, "the money's already gone. She told Marcus she spent it. gasps. Wide eyes. A few people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Sarah reached for my arm. "Stop, please," I pulled away. "You didn't stop when you mocked my father. You didn't stop when you cashed in on my pain. So why should I stop now?" Marcus tried to salvage his pride. "It was just a stupid bet, dude. No one thought she'd actually—" I cut him off. "You bet on my grief. You bet on my tears. And she sold me out for cash. If that's your idea of a stupid bet, I'd hate to see what you call serious." The room was ice. Sarah buried her face in her hands. Marcus shifted back in his chair, suddenly small. And me? For the first time in months, I felt tall. I stood, set my drink down, and looked around the table. "I hope you all had your laughs. Because this was the last time anyone profits off of me." And with that, I walked out. Sarah followed me into the parking lot, begging, sobbing. "It was a mistake, I swear, I love you, please don't leave me." But I turned to her with a calm I didn't know I had. "You didn't just make me cry. You made me see you for who you really are. And that's something I'll never forget." She grabbed my hand. "We can fix this," I pulled free. "No. You broke it. And some things can't be fixed." And then I walked away, leaving her in the lot, surrounded by the wreckage of her own choices. That night, I went home and did something I should have done weeks earlier. I packed a bag. Not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Because love without respect isn't love, it's control. And I wasn't going to be controlled anymore. Because here's the truth, when you've been humiliated publicly, sometimes the only way to reclaim your dignity is to stand in the same spotlight and tell your story yourself. And for me, that was the real payoff. Not revenge, not anger, just freedom.